Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to a special housing report. Today we're going to look at what happens to real house prices in a stagflationary era. We ask this question because we wonder if the inflationary genie is out of the bottle. Let's look back over history at New Zealand house prices going back to 1962, in particular real house prices, so adjusted for inflation. Now you can see here in this chart that real house prices fell 39% between September 1974 and December 1980. That was our last stagflationary era. Essentially, house prices were flat to slightly lower, but inflation did the damage there, and so real house prices fell 39%. The parallels between now and back then are startling. Back in the early 1970s, we had a wave of cash circulating the globe after the United States spent a lot of money on the Vietnam War. Also, the end of the Bretton Woods Agreement meant that we had an inflationary period of loose monetary policy. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Back then, central banks weren't sure what to do, and it took them until 1979 to work it out. Now let's look fast forward to the 2000s and see what's happening now. We also have the US spending up on a couple of big wars. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have actually cost the US more, a third more in inflation-adjusted terms, than the Vietnam War. We've also seen heavy US government and consumer borrowing over the last 5 to 6 years, and loose monetary policy from Alan Greenspan and now Ben Bernanke as the US Federal Reserve Chairman. Back in New Zealand too, we've also borrowed heavily, particularly from foreign investors, and our housing market has spiked sharply higher. Back in 2000, the introduction of the new 39% tax rate encouraged a bunch of people to set up LAQCs, loss attributing qualifying companies, and family trusts to invest in residential property to try and avoid paying that 39% tax rate. We had an influx of migration, particularly from Asia, but also expats returning after 9/11, and prices spiked. In real terms, New Zealand house prices almost doubled between 2000 and 2008. This was the fastest, strongest growth of house prices in New Zealand in the history of New Zealand. Now we say that prices could fall 30% in nominal terms over the next couple of years. And in real terms, that's a fall of more than 40%. But remember, this isn't unprecedented given what we saw in the 1970s. Last time, it took 22 years for real house prices to recover to the levels they were at in 1974. So between 1974 and 1996, as you can see here in this chart, house prices in real terms actually fell, and it took a long time to recover. So last time it took 22 years. We say it could take more than 10 years to recover. And if we do have a serious stagflationary period like we had back in the 70s, that's looking conservative. It could take 30 years to recover to the November 2007 peak for house prices in New Zealand. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was a special housing report for interest.co.nz.